Hey everyone. I know we're heading towards the end of the day, and I too like coffee. I'm hoping we can kind of coax some more folks in from their tasty beverages. But my name is Rich DeVaul. I am the CEO and co-founder of xNet. And I am here today to talk about one of the most challenging and important issues I think that DePIN faces, and of course talk about that in terms of my awesome project. So a little bit about me. Before I became a crypto founder, I, among other things, did a PhD at the MIT Media Lab. I led a secret research team at Apple. That was a lot of fun. I still can't tell you what I did there. And then I joined Google X in the early days and ultimately became the CTO of Google X, which was a really fun gig with an amazing pay package that I still sometimes miss. But there are things that I couldn't do at Google X, and I really tried to get Google into crypto at that time, and they weren't able to go there. And ultimately, I had to leave the comfy confines of corporate America and go out and be a founder, once again, in the corporate backspace. Oops, I think I pressed the wrong thing here. How can I advance my slides? All right. So, who here is actively building in DePIN? Hopefully many of you. Raise your hands, show of hands. Great. So the origins of DePIN is really, I think, a lot of optimism and the desire to bring crypto into real world use cases, right? And every single DePIN project I've encountered that I would put firmly in the category of DePIN, and we could decide what's really DePIN, has some genuine real world problem they're trying to address. And that real world problem, involves something physical, okay, decentralized physical infrastructure. And a lot of these projects say, hey, I want to solve for storage. Great, that requires physical storage infrastructure. Or I want to solve for energy. Or I want to solve, as an xNet case, for communication. These are all real needs, right? There's no question. And in many cases, there's some pretty obvious product market fit. But the problem is, in many cases, you have built products without really completely thinking through the demand side. I fell prey to the same mistake. 10 years ago at Google X, I started a project called Project Loon. Some of you may have heard of this. We put cell towers in the stratosphere on high altitude balloons to deliver connectivity to the world. It was a really technically hard thing to do. It cost a lot of money. And you know what? It worked beautifully, except that the customers for this weren't the people on the ground needing connectivity. It was the mobile network operators. What we didn't do was actually support their billing and rating systems. So we built a beautiful stratospheric network that served data beautifully. And in the wake of earthquakes in Costa Rica and hurricanes and such, they turned it on. It worked. And then as soon as the natural disaster passed, they turned it off. And the reason was they would have had to do a little bit of work to integrate our network with theirs on the billing side. And so they didn't. And so Loon failed. So if you build it, they will come. That's not the case. You actually have to solve for the real problems that are involved. And I don't care how elegant your idea is. I don't care how beautiful the technology is. I don't really care about decentralization. You know what I care about? I care about that you have a customer that's willing to pay for your thing, and not in the abstract sense. Connectivity. Everybody needs connectivity. There's no question about it. It's one of the most valuable goods in the world. But if you don't do the entire stack, if you don't do the entire end-to-end integration and make it super easy for your customers, they're not going to buy it. Because you know what? There is a centralized, old-school solution that is competing with you right now. And it's going to be way easier for your potential customers to say yes to that solution than to yours, even if yours on the face value is better. So this is something you really need to ingrain deep in your bones. You actually have to solve that problem all the way end to end and know exactly what your customer wants. All right. So I want to tell you a little bit about xNet, because this is what we've done. everybody knows that wireless connectivity is valuable. In the US, it's a $300 billion business. $140 billion of that is just wireless data. The US major network operators are kind of screwed. They're heavily indebted, and the cost of money is high, which means that nobody is building out additional capacity right now, and they won't for years. At the same time, data demand is going up on an exponential curve. It's supposed to basically double between now and 2029, and the networks are already maxed out. So what these mobile network operators need is someone else to build networks for them, and that's what we're doing. xNet deploys a combination of rooftop CBRS radios and Wi-Fi radios. And what we're doing is we're building the world's best neutral host wireless network. And we're showing that you can do this. This is a recent snapshot of our network. We've recently passed 1,000 nodes. And we also have some pretty exciting news on the demand side too. But it really took careful planning to get there. After Loon failed, I decided that my next foray into connectivity would be mobile first. I hired industry veterans, people who'd sold into my customer for decades. I hired the CTO out of TruePhone so that we could actually build the back end that would trivially integrate with the mobile operators. And because of all those efforts, we've had some real, genuine success. So, in fact, I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but we've now closed a deal with the US's biggest mobile operator. And while I'm not going to officially put their name up on here, I will say that that is 142 million devices in the US that will automatically connect to our network. In the last month alone, we had over 3 million devices connect, and we've served terabytes of data. So to do this, to get to this point, you need to study your industry. You need to know exactly how people are doing it right now. You need to solve a real problem, of course, but understand that in the real world, your competitors aren't other crypto projects. They are the centralized incumbents that you are competing with. And in fact, you need to find those incumbents that you can serve because they are who is going to be your biggest market. And it's not going to come quickly. You know, when we started with this project, I thought it would take us a year to get our first roaming deal with a mobile operator, a major US mobile operator. It actually took closer to 2. And that wasn't because we didn't do our technology right. It was because it just takes a long time. And we had the people to do those deals. We had the people who knew the right folks, but we had to mature our product to a certain point, and then we could close the deal. Sorry. So, big news. xNet, as I said, has closed a deal with the largest mobile operator in the US. They are paying us for every gigabyte of data. And we are growing really rapidly. I think I've got a slide that shows, sorry about this, yeah. So I'm not going to name the name, but you can see my colleague, Tom and Miguel, our CTO, standing in an office in Dallas. There happens to be a logo behind them. But this is real data, real customers. So we're seeing, sessions in a month. There's 1.5 million, 1.7 million, and we're talking about, terabytes of data. So this is the real deal, folks. It's achievable. You can do this if you structure your project the right way. So this is the point I'm really trying to make here. If DePIN is going to be serious, if DePIN is going to be something that really changes the world, we can't think about this in terms of, oh, we're going to disrupt the incumbents. We have to work with the incumbents. We can't think about this as, oh, we're going to compete with other crypto projects. No, you're actually competing with centralized projects. Your product has to be that much better, and it has to be super, super easy for your customer to buy. And if you don't design for this from the very beginning, you are very unlikely to be successful. But there really is hope. It's really doable, And I think Fluence, for example, is doing it right. I think they are building a product that people need, and I think they're focused on closing those customers. And I think a lot of you in this room are probably working on similar things. But again, the old notion of sort of build it and they will come, no. Start from the very beginning, design for your customer, understand that your competition is in fact the real world centralized services, and you too can have success after grinding for a couple of years to get there. Okay, so I think that's the core of my
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
You talked a lot about building for success. The other thing I think you built for is appropriate token economics. And I think that's a really important component. And I think GeoNet went into some detail on their token economics. I think yours are pretty compelling. Could you share that as well to people? Because that is a difference from a lot of crypto projects from the previous generation.
Thank you, Tom. I think tokenomics is incredibly important. And I meant to mention that earlier. Your tokenomics absolutely has to work. Our tokenomics is pretty straightforward. Our big customer pays us in cash for every gigabyte of data on our network. We sell radios to people like you who deploy them and operate them. I reward you in, right now, 50 xNet per gigabyte of data that you ship, and then I take 80% of the revenue from our customers, our big telco customers, and I use that to buy and burn our token, thus doing a revenue share back to you. And of course, it's deflationary, right? We're buying those tokens back and we're burning them. So tokenomics really does matter, and that's how you incentivize and create the supply. And so my talk was mostly focused on the demand side, but clearly, if you're going to actually incentivize people to deploy and operate, in order to do that properly, you need to properly incentivize your supply. And by the way, we have got that somewhat right, but we can do a lot better. And to give you an example, when we set up our incentives, our token was trading around 5 cents, which we thought was fantastic, right? And now I'm paying you basically $10 a gigabyte for data, which is a little bit insane, right? It cost a mobile network operator, by the way, in the US about 50 cents to deliver a gigabyte of data to your phone. Our network is an order of magnitude cheaper. And so I can sell them data, retail for half of what they are actually, what it actually costs them, and I can make money doing it. And that's really, really important. So the tokenomics matter, but the economics, of course, of delivering your product also are critical.
Excellent. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, do I see a question? Yes.
Hi, Greg from C4E project, building use cases for DePIN use cases for energy and e-mobility. Actually, we thought about having such tokenomics in a way that we have revenue from customers who are paying, for instance, for EV charging. And then the easiest way is to buy back token and burn. But how are you coping with the regulatory that they are not judged like a security token?
Yeah, so there is some discussion, and this is sort of inside baseball, of course, but if you burn your token, that can be a bad fact from the perspective of, let's say, US regulators, in terms of like assigning the notion of being let's say, a security versus a utility token. But it really depends on how you do it. If I'm gratuitously burning tokens as a way to reduce supply, right? Let's just say I'm gonna, I don't know, decide arbitrarily that we are going to, destroy a big chunk of our supply. That's not going to look good, and you have to be very careful about that. But if instead what you're doing is you're saying, as an operational revenue share for your network, you're actually burning tokens. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you this is legal advice, but the fact that we are actually utilizing this as a mechanism to kind of return, in some sense, fiat value directly to our operators as part of the operation of the network. We think that that's a defensible position, but there's a challenge with this, right? I've talked to folks who say, oh, you should just emit a certain total amount of tokens, let's say per epoch, and distribute that amongst your operators. That looks like we're gaming the supply. If we say we're going to distribute effectively a dollar value of our tokens to our operators, from the perspective of the regulators, this now looks more like, a utility token, because in some sense we're connecting the actual market value of our token back to the market value of the thing that we're serving. So, but yes, tokenomics from the regulatory side are complicated, and obviously I'm not a lawyer. So, yeah.
Great. Any other questions? All right, let's have a round of applause for Richard.
Thank you so much.